I got offered the job as press officer for GP2 when it started. So I was Alexa, who everyone knows is the press officer for Formula 2 and Formula 3.
Not Amazon's Alexa.
No, not Amazon's Alexa. No, Alexa. She's amazing. She's one of the best press officers I've. Oh God, my Alexa just shouted at me.
Hello and welcome to the F1 Feeder Series podcast, your guide to keeping up to date on everything in the junior single-seater world. I'm your host, Jim Kimberley, and wow, we have quite the episode for you this week. We have two Feeder Series A-listers joining the podcast to show that dreams can come true, because a lot of you are dreaming of one of the guests in particular. I was dreaming of the other, but let me introduce perhaps the most requested driver we ever get asked to come onto the podcast. He's the only Formula 2 driver to have reached a podium on 5 race weekends in 2022, which makes him the real 1 in a billion star. Welcome to the podcast, Jehan Daruvala.
Yeah, hi guys, thanks for having me. Finally we made it happen, so looking forward to it.
I think there's a lot of people looking forward to it as well, Jehan. Thank you so much for joining. And after Floris asked on Twitter for guests that people would like, even I joined in the fun by putting down some names myself. And our second guest name was one of those 2 names I put in. In terms of Twitter followers for podcast guests, this man has one of the highest, if not the highest number of followers.
Oh, very good.
He might be the sports presenter with one of the longest, if not the longest, dramatic pauses in the industry. And I might be one of the most excited, if not the most excited podcast hosts this summer to introduce Will Buxton. How are you, Will?
I'm a little bit embarrassed, but thank you very much. That was a lovely intro, mate. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Do you know I'm going to introduce Floris, of course, I have to, but do you know that we had Harry Benjamin join the podcast and he said that you do the dramatic pause in real life and it's amazing. So getting you this virtually is brilliant as well. Sorry, Harry, for dropping you in it, but I had to give it a go. I don't think I'll ever emulate it to that degree. But finally, let me go for it.
It was very good.
Thank you so much. Last and possibly even least with these heavyweight names, but we couldn't have them on the podcast without him. It's the F1feederseries.com founder, Floris Visman. Welcome back to the podcast. Great names joining us, but be honest, after Vasseur and Viscal, the Dutch Adventures, a rover, is this a fall back down to earth for you?
Well, you know what they say, if it ain't Dutch, it ain't much.
I didn't know they said that.
Yeah, but that is, and I have to tell this, this cannot be said about the future GOAT. I witnessed at Zandvoort because I was at the ADAC F4 weekend at Zandvoort just last weekend. And I saw this kid drive. This kid, he's named Andrea Kimi Antonelli.
I've heard of him, yeah.
15 years old. He's a Mercedes junior and he swept the field. He won 7 races out of 9 this season. And, you know, I think Ferrari are really, regretting that they didn't sign him because he's an Italian named Kimi. What else do you want?
Ticking all the boxes. It's great to see you going to some of the races as well with Zandvoort. It's the European season. We're going right into it, aren't we? We'll get to that in a second. But finally, before we get into it, a quick reminder to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you don't have the time to listen or watch each week, you can still find some great short videos on our channel with our best bits. And if you're listening to the audio-only version, please leave a review on whatever podcast platform you're using. You can leave a rating on Spotify, preferably 5 stars. And you can also review us on Apple Podcasts if you have a spare 2 minutes. Thank you to everyone who rates us. It really, really helps us out. Let's get into it, because although this is the F1 Feeder Series podcast, I think we have to start with a little-known championship called Formula One. We occasionally have to speak about it. And that's because one of our guests drove a McLaren F1 car at Silverstone last week. What a moment for your career, Jehan. How did that come about? And did it live up to the 2 decades of dreaming about it?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did. Silverstone for my first time in Formula One is, probably the best track to drive on. Yeah, I still can't really describe it. The amount of downforce that these cars produce is, pretty insane. We do corners in a Formula One car on race fuel flat out, which aren't even flat out in Formula Two and in qualifying. So, arriving a lot slow. So it was, hard to get my head around it. But once you trust the car, even though I was doing a lot of laps and my body was getting tired, every time I jumped in, I had a smile on my face. And yeah, it's the most fun I ever had in a race car. And, hopefully there's another one coming around the corner.
How did it come about? Like, how did that drive come around the corner, so to speak? Because, well, we would have expected, because of the Red Bull connections and AlphaTauri or a Red Bull seat, something maybe in FP1, but you were joining McLaren at Silverstone for a non-race weekend test. How did it come around?
Yeah, I think, the main thing was to do Formula One mileage. The only way to do them this year with Red Bull was in an official FP1 session. They weren't running the AlphaTauri test car at any point this year. Dr. Marco made it pretty clear. So I think looking for options, McLaren, obviously a very historic team, won many world championships. The 2021 car, they are running a test program. And I mean, I would never say no. It's probably one of the fastest cars ever in Formula One history, those generation of cars. And, to get that opportunity, together with everyone supporting me and my management, we made it possible. And it was probably the best 2 days ever. To have Silverstone to myself itself was a big deal. And then to have that in a Formula One car was extremely special.
See, dreams can come true, can't they? All over the place. Go on, Floris.
Yeah. In a situation like this, Jehan, does Red Bull have to allow you to do this? How does that work?
Yeah, definitely. My management and my dad obviously had a chat with Mr. Marco, and for him it was a no-brainer. To drive a Formula One car for one of his junior drivers, it's always good learning. And if ever I get the opportunity in the future, if it is in a free practice or any other test, I've already had a couple of days experience, so it always does help. And that's the good part about being in the Red Bull junior team. They allow us to explore our routes and give us opportunities when they arise.
Such a fantastic opportunity for you. I could tell just getting the way you speak now, and anybody who's listening rather than watching, Jehan visibly is happy and excited about it. And why wouldn't you be? Yeah,
and I'm not that emotional normally, so it's.
I think Mr. Buxton has a question.
Can I ask? Yeah, because it's always a fascinating point. The move from F2 to F1, it's still such a leap, not just in terms of technology and speed, braking points, G-forces, but the sheer amount that you have to learn in how to operate a Formula One car. Did you get like a big, thick book that you had to read through first of how everything works in terms of the steering wheel, or was it very much learn as you go?
Yeah, exactly. So I first did a couple of days in the simulator. I asked if I could have like the steering wheel book and stuff to learn.
A steering wheel book? It's just a different world, isn't it?
Now I understand why they didn't give it to me before I went there, because I would be completely blank, But when I went there and did a couple of days in the sim, okay, driving fast was one thing, but the main thing was actually learning the procedures of the car, what to do with what buttons in case something goes wrong. The engine, if you don't have light telemetry, you can't run. That's how a lot of things work. And even about controlling my nerves and stuff, I constantly had to focus on buttons and things that I had to do that you kind of don't think about actually being nervous and driving. In the beginning, you're just trying to make sure, that you roll out of the pits and everything is safe. But yeah, to answer your question, I did have to go through a bunch of notes. And when I did arrive there, they had a Mercedes engine guy to run me through like the safety stuff. And I was almost thinking he was trying to scare me. He was like, oh, this thing is like 1,000 degrees. Don't touch it. You'll be burned like that. And I'm like, yeah, are you trying to scare me the day before I drive Formula One car? And he was like, yeah, that's the whole point. So he was like, if you're not in the car, don't touch it. Stay away. So I was like, okay,
amazing.
That's clear.
Amazing.
What a fascinating insight. You're one of few drivers, no matter happens in the rest of your career to have ever driven one, right? There's only so many men in all of history, and women.
A race-winning F1 car as well.
Yeah.
Oh, one lucky
Definitely
boy,
was.
Jehan. We're all very, very jealous. And yeah, it's a dream come true. It really is. I mean, of all the teams you can go to as well, McLaren is one of the most storied teams in the sport. We're delighted for you, we really are. And who knows what will happen next year. And we're going to talk about that actually, because we are heading into the public side, at least, of silly season. I'm sure there's been plenty going on behind closed doors for months. Names like Piastri, Pourchaire, Sargent, and of course, some F2 drivers that test F1 cars get thrown into the mix. Will, how much are the 2022 F2 drivers going to get mentioned when you walk around the paddock talking about what's happening next year with silly season that we're going into? It's
so hard, isn't it? Because there's so few spaces. And I think it all ultimately depends on what some of the elder statesmen end up doing. Does Seb stay around for another year? Will Lance get another shot? I mean, obviously, probably. Now that Pierre has reconfirmed at AlphaTauri for another season, so there's not going to be a Red Bull spot opening up because Yuki's also doing a great job at AlphaTauri. It's really where do the spaces open up? If Oscar couldn't get a seat at Alpine, and it looks like he's going to get farmed out to Williams, well, there goes another seat. So it's so hard, and it's so hard for all these guys who merit the chance, merit the shot, who are being spoken about because of how good they are, but it's very much with the caveat of, well, where do they go? And that's always difficult. And you have these seasons in Formula 2, and you have had for decades where you see the talent, you want them to get a chance, but where's the opening?
Just on that, because you're talking correctly, and I was going to go on to Floris there, so thanks for stealing the bit about Gasly and AlphaTauri. But just
Sorry.
on that, you've got right. You've got the drivers like Piastri, right, who has come up with, well, as Jehan knows, like with such out of his first season, doing so well in Formula 2, and then can't return because of the rule of the champion. Nowhere to go because you're stuck in one of the driver academies, right? And that's not a bad thing because the driver academies help propel you forwards. I don't know if Piastri would be quite where he is. So those are good things. But then you have the situation now with, we think we'll have a driver that'll get promoted and everything with Pourchaire, but Joe made his way forwards ahead of Piastri. But now Joe's not exactly doing a bad job in Formula 1. What's going to happen with Alfa Romeo next year now?
Yeah, because we know how much Fred loves Théo Pourchaire. And Fred was always talking about this being Théo's shot at the title in F2, then moves to Formula 1 in 2023. But I think that was on the basis that nobody expected Joe to turn up and do a decent job. And I don't say that harshly. I don't think anyone did expect Joe to turn up and do a decent job. And he is. He's doing a phenomenal job. So do they then have to reappraise bringing in Pourchaire? And again, there's not enough seats for all the talent. Which is why when you look at the prospect of an Andretti coming in, or whoever the next team might be, if it could open up 2 more seats, particularly if it was an Andretti and it wasn't, factory aligned, if it was an independent team, it could just open things up so much more. And that's what we all want. We want to see the best drivers racing in Formula 1. You want to see the top talent in Formula 2 getting promoted to Formula 1. You want to see that changeover. It's what we all want to see. It's what Jehan wants to see. But it's what everybody wants to see.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Some of those elder statesmen are the keys potentially to unlocking it. The question that I was alluding to a second ago, Floris, was Jan's test coming in the week where Gasly was confirmed, or doubly confirmed, because Tost was saying he was confirmed before they confirmed it, as all things seem to always happen at AlphaTauri. Is Verstappen now creating a bit of a bottleneck almost, because the Red Bull Junior team don't need to be promoting drivers all the way through because they have this Verstappen superstar that they don't need to replace anytime soon?
Yeah, I think you can take a look at it from 2 sides. For the drivers, it's a bit harder because you have a lot of Red Bull Juniors, no seats in F1, and of course their goal is to reach F1. That's their only goal, and then after that they'll see they want to become professional drivers. But F1 is the goal. But on the other side, you have the team objective, and Red Bull wants to produce their own world champions, which they have already done twice with Vettel and Verstappen. Verstappen now has a contract until, I don't know, 2040 or something. So he'll stay in place, but Perez, you don't know, he's doing a phenomenal job, but you don't know how long he's going to stay. Gasly will want to, be a number one somewhere, maybe in a factory team. Tsunoda, we don't know what's going to happen with them. But for me, I think Red Bull already, succeeded. And also, if you look at the grid, like half the grid is probably has driven for Red Bull or had an association with Red Bull. So they're not even just succeeding themselves, but they're also providing, drivers that they've taught well into Formula One.
So possibly part of the problem is Jehan could get himself promoted and then take the title away from Max Verstappen, and Red Bull have been the problem facing themselves. I'm going to move on because of the amount of questions we've got. We were talking just before the podcast, laughing at this. A lot of attention, guys, a lot of attention. But Formula One isn't the only championship heading into a mad month with 4 races. Formula 2 is also having 4 busy weekends with 8 races. Jehan, how are you going to cope with that? Are you looking forward to it, or are you dreading it? It's going to be a manic July.
No, I think definitely looking forward to it. A lot of us last year made comments that our season, was not packed enough. We had too many gaps between every round. Especially having a 2-month gap driving straight in Monaco. You could see, like, at times the drivers are a bit rusty. But yeah, definitely, I wouldn't complain. I think it's more harder for the mechanics and the logistics point of view. But as drivers, I think the more we drive, the happier we are. So yeah, I think 4 and 5 weeks is a lot, but it's a crucial point in the championship. Obviously I'm still third, but I'm in terms of points, I'm quite a long way from Felipe. And if there's a time, it's now before the summer break where I can score a lot of points and try to do some catching up.
Well, you'll be very happy to know once you get this 4 and 5 done, a little summer break, and then you've got a triple header to go back to. So it's a lot of races and not a lot of time. With the championship at the moment, Drugovich has surprised everybody, and he's really going forwards. But we saw Joe was around this time last year. Joe was in the top of the championship, not with so much of a lead, but you're still right there. You've not got the win yet, but you keep getting these results to just we say consistency is key in Feeder Series in particular. It always is. Yeah. You must be pretty happy, irrespective of your championship position, that you have just been consistent.
Yeah, I think I am pretty happy. Obviously, I do want to be winning races, and that's natural for everyone. Barcelona was a difficult one to swallow because I was obviously on the lead driver on the prime option strategy, and I had the car failed in that race, and I was starting right at the front with my rivals 8th and 9th, and I ended up not scoring anything, and Felipe ended up winning the race. So yeah, that was hard to accept, but that's part of racing. In Baku, actually, the lap Yuri crashed. I don't know if people actually know about it, but Drugovich hit the wall in front of me in turn 5, and he completely bent his suspension.
No.
And he was ready to retire the car coming into the pits. And his engineer was like, mate, there's only 5 minutes to go, so stay out. And he finished the race only because the safety car stayed out. Otherwise, he was ready to park it up, and would have been another 15 points catching up. So, yeah, in the end, again, that's racing. And, sometimes luck is on your side. But mathematically, I have to only catch him up 5 or 6 points a weekend, to be at the end. So the goal is to now, really convert those podiums and point finishes into wins. And that's definitely going to be my target for the next month.
Yeah, and if you get any damage, just try and keep the safety car out as long as possible. What a method of doing it. Just with the busyness as well, Will, that applies to the media side, that you are also going to be very busy. F3 and W Series are also joining for 3 of those weekends in July. Are the commentators and on-site reporters like yourself and Jake C going to be just as exhausted as the drivers and teams come hungry, ready for the summer break?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always such a rush. It's always such a joy when you have a packed calendar and when you have a packed weekend. But certainly for someone like Jake C, who's doing F1, F2, F3, W Series, it's a lot. I remember the days when I was commentating GP3, GP2 and Formula One. And your first commentary is like 7 a.m. and then you finish the day at 7 p.m., 8 p.m. I actually fell asleep in a GP3 race once on lead commentary. I was so tired, and it was in the first generation of GP3, and the engines, they had such a low drone. They were like, and it was the end of like one of those mammoth days. I'd been up since like 4 a.m. and someone had to shout down the headphones at me to tell me the checkered flag had gone because I fell asleep on the last lap. And I don't know if there's any footage of it anywhere, but yeah, I legitimately fell asleep I had no co-commentator, and it was, I'm embarrassed to say it, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
That's brilliant. I mean, I've been to enough races to know what the support series are like. I remember the GP3 days, and you're right. I've had some of my best naps in my life at Silverstone, just hunched over listening to the cars. So that's one thing, but doing it when you're commentating,
it was a really awful race, and
Barcelona.
I can't even remember. I think it might be. I don't even know. I genuinely don't even know where it was. All I remember is waking up and realizing the checkered flag had gone. It's like one of those moments where you just kind of nod off, and maybe it was 5 seconds, maybe it was 10, 15, I don't know. But I just had a little, doze and okay, yeah, checkered flag.
And if anybody does know which race that was, please send the footage over to us at F1 Series 1 on Twitter, because we need to see this. It's brilliant. What a story. And it's a great segue as well, thank you, because I'm going to put a little graphic on that says GP2. Before F1 TV, there was GP2, and before Drive to Survive, there was still Will Buxton. Netflix might have shot you a little bit more in the public eye, but you've been doing this for a long while, hence the F1 Feeder Series podcast that you're joining. It's so different now, but you must have so many good memories from those days doing GP2, GP3, doing the stuff with, was it NBC and Fox, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've been doing this for 20 years, which is great when you get social media hate.
One second, Will. Jehan, how old are you?
23.
Doesn't it hurt? Doesn't it hurt, Will?
Yeah.
We're going. Sorry, I very rudely interrupted you.
It's my first year, I got my first job in 2002 working at Formula One magazine. And I spent some time, living in a camper van, driving from race to race in Europe as a freelancer back in 2004. And I always used to love spending time in the Formula 3000 paddock back then. Formula 3000, Jehan, was what GP2 was called before it was GP2. GP2 then became Formula. I know you're too young to remember all this. But it was, I loved spending time in the F3000 paddock because it was where, the next generation of talent was coming from. So you're hanging out with guys like Enrico Tocciello and Tonio Liuzzi and Pantano and Ernesto Vizo and all those kids. It was great. It was a really, really great time. And Verdheim and, all those guys. And they were the ones trying to make it to F1. And I thought, well, I'm kind of same age as these guys, so I want to get to know them. And then I got offered the job as press officer for GP2 when it started. So I was Alexa, who everyone knows is the press officer for Formula 2 and Formula 3.
Not Amazon's Alexa.
No, not Amazon's Alexa. No, Alexa. Alexa, she's amazing. She's one of the best press officers I've. Oh God, my Alexa just shouted at me. She's one of the best press officers I've ever worked with ever, and I was Alexa for the first 3 years of GP2, GP3, and GP3 didn't exist back then, just GP2. So PR'd the Rosberg Championship year and the Hamilton Championship year and the Timo Glock Championship year, which was huge fun, and it was great because the series had just started and it was a real kind of close-knit community and just really happy times, really, really fun times of going through this. The start of something which ended up being really, really good and created so many amazing names and incredible careers and set so many great drivers on their path to stardom, and which then morphed into Formula 2 and Formula 3 and took us to where we are now. So yeah, it was 20 odd years ago, mate. Long time. Loved every second of it.
I bet. And it's been a cosmic leap to where Formula 2 and Formula 3 is now. And Jehan, you've lived through it as well, because you were driving when F3 was still European F3 when you started in it. Yeah. Liberty Media have taken over, have had some of this redefining the pyramid to make it a little bit more obvious for somebody who is new to the sport. F1 2-3 is a little easier than F1. What's GP2? What's Formula 3? You're all this. And it's been great. Have you noticed, Jehan, a big difference in attention, not just from you rising through the ranks, but just the amount of attention Formula 2 or Formula 2 level racing has had during that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest change is actually coming from the older version of F3, then to racing in F3 in 2019 on the F1 weekends. Yeah, there's a lot more, obviously, fans, coverage, and your following kind of goes up. I think when you're not on the F1 weekends, it's still there, but it's definitely not as much. It's I think just more from fans who are really into motorsport and want to be watching F3 and F2. But I think what happens now is people, even when you put on Sky Sports, there's a lot of F2 races playing. And even now, even in countries like India, the Formula 2 and Formula 3 races are aired on TV, which is a really, really big deal. And, things are definitely progressing in the right way. And for us as drivers, that's definitely good. The more fans that we have, the more following, it's just better and better. Obviously, it's not near the scale of Formula 1, but, it's definitely quite high.
It's not far off, though, at the moment, Jay. And that's the big thing. The fight, as Will knows, the Formula 1 YouTube channel is really promoting it, and it's so much more accessible, which, I mean, it's great timing for a certain Twitter account called F1 Feeder Series Floris to start having Formula 1 putting out high-quality graphics, replays, on demand almost, easy live coverage of F1 TV. It really is a bit of a boom time. Will, you're on the inside of all of this as well. And since Liberty Media took over and you kind of jumped ship and went down this route, you've kind of shot to this stardom level of one of the faces of Formula 1 on this Liberty Media side. They're taking the whole thing very seriously and are really putting the sport, the whole sport, Formula 1, 2, 3, in a completely different light to where it was when you first joined.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right, calling it GP2, GP3, because the FIA owned the name to F2 and F3 back then, and getting everything aligned, I think you're right, has been huge in terms of recognition. Obviously, there was recognition within the sport already, but as you say, externally, and allowing that ease of access and understanding for the fan base to recognize the ladder and to understand how it works. And I think Liberty recognized that pretty early on, the FIA and Formula 1 working together in order to make that happen. And it can only be a positive for everybody on that ladder in terms of getting them in the shop window and getting that recognition that then leads to the sponsorship, which is so essential in terms of getting the drive, getting the placement, and then moving up to the next level. But yeah, absolutely. When we have our production meetings of what content we're going to create over the weekend or what's going to go up on the website, the team are so conscious of what's going on in Formula 3, what's going on in Formula 2. How that all feeds ultimately, to Formula 1. It's one big ecosystem.
Well, that's enough questions from us, because the F1 Feeder Series podcast is for you, viewers and listeners. In particular, this episode with two titanic guests. We're going to move on to the part of the podcast where you have your say with hashtag AskF1FS. If this is your first time watching or listening, you can get involved by using the hashtag AskF1FS on Twitter, joining our Discord and using the podcast questions channel, or simply commenting on our YouTube videos and asking whatever it is that's on your mind. I'm going to start with this one for Will, and this one's from Damien. Do you have any former or current Feeder Series driver that you really want to see racing in F1? I'll make it a bit more difficult, who's not joining this podcast right this second.
I was going to say Jehan. I really like the look of Teo Pourchaire. I think he looks great, and knowing how highly he's regarded by Fred, and knowing the drivers that Fred's run over his career, then yeah, I'd be seriously excited about him. I think Dennis Hauger, I think is a really exciting prospect as well. They're two guys I'd like to really see some more from and see if they could cut it in Formula 1. If you're going back over the entire history of Formula 2 and GP2, mate, there are so many. And it's funny because so many of them ended up in Formula E. And Formula E for a while almost had this perfect grid of guys that I'd followed through GP2 that I thought should have made it to Formula 1. And it was like this alternate reality of that's my perfect F1 lineup, with the Sam Birds and the Mitch Evans, the Antonio Felix da Costas, and all those kind of guys who I thought deserved a shot, who I thought deserved a chance. And Formula E almost became that, as I said, like that alternate F1 reality of what it might have been had those guys with that talent, but not necessarily the chance or the luck, made it to the top. But my big answer is always Giorgio Pantano, because I just believed he was the greatest thing and I still believe he's one of the greatest racing drivers I ever saw in anything ever. Him and Da Costa, I think, are up there with the best I've ever seen race anything.
Terrific answers. I'm going to stay impartial, but I'll give a big nod for those. This next question is from Gaia, RS Supremacy. Very good. Got Prema in the middle of that.
That's clever.
Just noticed that. I wonder who the question's for. Jehan, if you could go back in time and race in F1 in the past, what year or what era would you choose and what team would you join? Good question.
Great question.
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I would probably say 2005, 2006. It's just because I started watching F1 in those days, and Michael Schumacher battling Fernando Alonso for the World Championships. I was still am a massive Fernando Alonso fan, and probably just be the teammate of Alonso. Be in the mix, see what he has to say in those team meetings and stuff, just to get into his mindset. You can clearly see I'm a big Fernando Alonso fan. Just his pure ability to bring the best out of any car he drives. I would, definitely that would be my era. I think the Schumacher Alonso era would be the one I would choose.
Can I say what a great answer that is? Not just because he wants to drive that car, but because Jehan wants to learn from Fernando. I think that's a phenomenal answer. That's a great answer.
Very, very clever. No, I like that. And it was great. At the time I started going to Formula One races live as well, and the noise difference, the cars back then, and some like Montoya and Raikkonen and a lot, they're just terrific names. Brilliant answer. I will fully support that. Floris, you've got the next question.
Exactly. Yeah. This is one for Will from West Mansbridge on Twitter. He says, first of all, hi, congrats on your recent nuptials. It was really nice.
Thank you.
What's the most difficult interview you've ever done, and who was it with?
Tough question.
Don't say the F1 Feed Series podcast.
No, I tried to do an interview with Owen Wilson on a grid walk once, and Owen Wilson had agreed to do it because in the old days when I was with Speed Channel, which was owned by Fox, we didn't do a whole grid walk. I would just be on the grid, and then the guys in the studio would throw down to me once I'd got an interview. We'd do the interview, and I'd throw back to them in the studio. And Owen Wilson obviously was doing the Cars movie, and one of my co-commentators on the Speed Channel, David Hobbs, was also in the Cars movie as one of the characters. So we were going to set this whole thing up, and it was going to be Lightning McQueen talking to David Hobbs' cap, and it was going to be really cool, right? Because it was going to help promote the film, which was why he was on the grid in the first place, was to promote Cars 2, I think it was. So getting ready to go, great. Owen Wilson's agreed to do it, brilliant. And then they throw down to me, and I, start the pitch and blah, 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 introduce him, microphone over like that, and he just looks at the camera and walks off. And I'm like, what do you do? What do you do?
And what did you do?
I think I just looked at the camera and just went, I think I just shrugged, and they just cut back to the studio again. I was like absolutely gobsmacked. So used to love Owen Wilson. Not anymore.
Spicy.
Who does that? That's not cool. That's not cool.
The grid walks are some terrific places to get the most awkward television possible. So again, if anyone watching or listening has that footage, please let us know.
But on the flip side, I had an amazing interview with Katy Perry, who was sweet and lovely and the most amazing person in the world. So you know what? Owen Wilson can blank me all day long because I got a great interview with Katy Perry.
Who's a real winner here.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. The next one is for Jehan. It's from Jonah KV. And for some reason, it says Hauger P1. I'm sure that would have to be P2.
It's a typo,
A very short question. Where will you go if there's no room in F1?
Yeah, I think that is a really good question. I think my realistic dream is still to go to Formula One, but as Will said earlier, and everyone knows, seats for next year are really, really limited. So my main goal is to still focus on the Formula 2 season, and if I can, try to probably do what Oscar did, like bag a reserve role, and even if there's a 5% chance of going to Formula One in 2024, I think I would take that shot, just because I do feel if I go away into another category, it's kind of just accepting that you don't come back normally. So I think, my goal is still to try to target a race seat next year, but it does look, in all fairness, really difficult. So, to continue having a good year, to prove a point, definitely finish the, top of all the Red Bull juniors and try to fight for that championship come the end of the year. And, hopefully I can stick around in the paddock and, have a say in silly season in 2024 when a lot of contracts, start to open up and a lot more seats could be up for grabs.
Let's just point out as well, you are comfortably the top Red Bull junior driver at the moment as well. So it's looking good in terms of that. So yeah, it's a long season, fortunately, speaking of last year in comparison. The next question is from Formula Scuderia to Will. And I don't know about this because I'm not on Twitter as much as some other people. It says, you've received a lot of hate on social media since Abu Dhabi. How have you coped with it? One, just for my benefit, what's the hate? Why? And how have you coped with it?
Yeah, I got a lot of hate after Abu Dhabi because I didn't body slam the FIA over Abu Dhabi.
I figured it would be something to do with that.
Yeah, and I didn't body slam the FIA because what I said was that I wasn't going to comment until the report into what happened was published. Because until the report was published, what are you going on? You're just going on what you believe happened in that room. And the only person that knew what happened in that room was Michael Massey. So I wasn't going to form an opinion based on my own preconceived ideas of what I think happened in that room, as everybody else on social media was doing. And nobody really wanted my opinion on what I thought of it. What they wanted me to do was agree with the fact that they were angry about it and to say that it was wrong. Because if I'd said I thought it was right, then they wouldn't have wanted my opinion. They just wanted me to agree with them. So I said nothing. And then got a load of crap over it. So, social media it can be great and it can be terrible. When the stuff got very personal, if someone got personal in their aggression and their anger, then I just block them because you've lost the argument at that point, and I'm not gonna sort of bother wasting my time trying to have a conversation with somebody who can't be, reasonable. So as soon as you start getting personal and you start personally attacking somebody, that's just an instant block. I've got no time for that. But I'll gladly have conversations with people about, anything if they're willing to be reasonable about it. So for the most part, you just, block out the noise, block out the hatred, block out the negativity, and try and focus on the positivity. It's an odd thing. In the old days, there used to be lots of positive comments, and the negative ones were the ones that stood out. And I'd always try and turn those people around. And then you hit a certain number of followers, and it seems, or maybe it's just because social media has gone this way, the vast majority of comments now appear to be very negative or trolling. And so the positive comments are the ones that now shine through because they're so rare. So it's, they're the ones that the negative becomes the noise, the positive becomes the light, and they're the ones that stand out now. So I think just you've got to have a healthy separation from your mobile phone and a healthy separation from the negativity. Because I don't understand people that just wake up and go, you know what, I'm going to go on Twitter today and I'm just going to be horrible to people. Like, who's got the time? Who's got the effort to waste on doing that? Like, get over it. Go out for a walk. Go and, I don't know, do something.
It's funny you say that because I remember it just came to me. I remember you used to be quite active on Reddit. This is pre-Liberty Media and stuff as well. You actually replied to one of my odd comments when we're looking to chat. I guess like to an Ask Me Anything with Ted Kravitz. You said you tried to collar him when you next were in the paddock and stuff. And I remember you were really active and you were growing the community. And even I've noticed, and I don't partake in it so much, even Reddit, the Formula One subreddit, it's grown and it's a different place from where it was because it was that's how I first became aware of you. It was such a positive place and things have changed so quickly.
I don't know if I think it's a major problem with social media because the internet was supposed to free us all. It was supposed to give us unlimited information so we could have, intelligent, reasonable debate that was, formed out of a knowledge base that was secure because you'd have unlimited access to everything. But what you get is you get an echo chamber because and confirmation bias, because if you're on social media, you only tend to follow accounts that agree with you and confirm the feelings and the opinions that you already have. If you're a Max Verstappen fan, you don't go and follow all the Lewis Hamilton, stan accounts. So you're just, if you support one driver, you're not going to follow the rival driver's account. So all you get is positivity about your driver and negativity about all of the others. So that is where you are entrenched. So any opinion that comes from outside of that is immediately seen as wrong and terrible and nasty, and I have to rage against it. There's no gray area, there's no nuance, there's no debate. It's black or white, it's right or wrong, and that's ultimately what social media has done. There's no room for debate anymore. There's no room to have a conversation. I remember my first trip to Silverstone as a kid. Stood on the banks next to people waving different flags for different teams and drivers and nationalities, and it wasn't like a football match where everyone hated each other. Everyone was united by this love of racing. And you could appreciate a move for 18th place as much as you could appreciate a move for the lead. And in reality, when you're at a racetrack, I still think it feels like that. But in the world of social media, it's completely different, and it's a scary place, and I don't like it. And I wish people could just appreciate how brilliant this sport is and all its stars are. And you don't have to make somebody feel bad to make yourself feel better.
Well said, Will. Very, very well said. And you're totally right as well. Formula One has got so many fans around the world. And sometimes it's always good to realize that when you look at Twitter and there's you and an account with 5 million followers, the global audience of Formula One is well into the hundreds of millions, that you still are part of the minority, even if you have an opinion with some Twitter followers. But I don't think we could answer a question any better than that. So I will go to this next one from Rishav and bring some positivity, possibly, because that went a bit deep, didn't it?
It
was good,
Sorry about that.
It was really good.
It was good.
It was needed.
It was, cleared the air. Love that. But this one's from Rishav, who wants to know, hey Jehan, never heard you speaking Hindi any day. Do you have any messages for the fans in Hindi?
Cool.
हाँ, मैं हिंदी बात कर सकता हूँ.
Translate, please, because mine's probably worse than yours.
I said yes, I can speak Hindi. Yeah, my Hindi is not great, but I can understand it and I can reply back. I've forgotten how to write it because I moved to England when I was 13 years old, and just been in racing paddocks and reading English books. Not written any Hindi for the last 10 years now. So I've forgotten how to write it. But in fact, a lot of people back home, they also ask me what language do I speak. But my first language with my family and my friends in school was always English. I was born and brought up to speak English. I went to an English school, and Hindi was always the language I learned in school. And it was more of a second language for us. And we were always born and brought up to speak English. So when I came to England, people were like, yeah, you speak good English for an Indian. But I'm like, yeah, I've been speaking English since I was born. So I would hope so.
I can confirm, for somebody who's spoken English since you were born, you do speak English pretty well, as if it was a native language since you were speaking since you were born. Brilliant. That answers a lot of questions that I'm sure other people had. Floris, you've got the next question.
Yeah, we kind of touched on this already a little bit. But Will, what is your favorite moment as a GP2 commentator? Maybe you already told us a few moments you want to forget, but...
That was GP3 commentary. So
sorry.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. Favorite moment on GP2 commentary. I'm always reminded of the Romain Grosjean when he overtook 4 drivers in one corner, and I just went, "Shut up! That's ridiculous." That's always brought up quite a lot. I think my favorite memory though of commentating GP2 was there's two. There's one where we had a really long delay at Spa. And Jerome D'Ambrosio was my co-commentator that year. And we just ended up fielding questions from Twitter. And they were things like, what color is a tennis ball, yellow or green? Is it neon yellow or neon green? And that was really fun. Those kind of stupid things. That was fun. That was a good rain delay. But the longest lasting memory I think I will always have is the 200th GP2 race, which was at Hockenheim. And Davide Valsecchi was doing some co-commentary that year, and it was his first real kind of jump in on doing co-commentary, and so the world was just starting to understand what a brilliant, electrifying commentator Davide Valsecchi could be. And I remember he jumped on my back and was piggybacking onto the back of me and literally kind of like riding me like a horse and hitting me in the side as I'm commentating. And he's got his microphone like over my shoulder and he's like, Coletti, 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 like this, as the guys are sweeping through into the stadium section. Then he's just bouncing around on my back like that. And it was mad. It was so fun. And yeah, I got so many happy memories of those days. But that's one that's like ingrained in my brain. It was beautiful. It was really fun.
Let me just jump in here. I suspect this may be related to a question that a certain Alex Jakes via Twitter had asked, saying he should tell the story of him commentating with Valsecchi. Is that something related? That'll
be the one. Yeah, that'll be it. That'll be it.
I was saving that till the end, and now it's been ruined.
Yeah,
it's a great story.
That was great. But also I got to do the podium interviews around those times as well. And I remember doing an interview with Luca Filippi in Monza when he won the race, and we were both in floods of tears on the podium because the week before he'd phoned me and said, do you think I should come back to do GP2 this weekend? And I was just like, mate, I don't know if it's going to do your career any good, because if you come back and you flunk, like, it's going to be really detrimental. If you come back, you've got to win. Like, you have to. You can't just finish in the points. You've got to come back and win. It was a one-off weekend. And he did. And he came back and he won at Monza in front of his home crowd for Coloni, Italian team. And it was so emotional. So those kind of emotional moments, they were pretty amazing.
Just a question. I know, Floris, you've got the next one as well after this, but do you miss it, Will? Like the lowest category days?
Of course. But because it was just so fun, and there's none of the pretension, none of the grandioseness of Formula One. You get to go to the F2 paddock, and you get to hang with everybody, and everybody. So it makes it more personal to you, and it means a bit more because you have that connection and that closeness. But you have to, ultimately Formula One started taking over, and NBC needed more of my time, and so I had to say goodbye to it. But in doing so, and in announcing that I was going, a guy saw the announcement and saw that I was leaving and contacted Formula One and said, I'd love to take over from Will. And that was Alex. And Alex was the best. Alex is 10 times the commentator that I could ever be. And him taking over and how that led to where he is now as, lead commentator on Channel 4 and him starting doing Formula 2 and Formula 3. Like, I'm so grateful that Alex was the one to take over, because he had that same passion and that same love of it. And as I say, he is one of the most phenomenal commentators I've ever heard in any sport. And I just think he's brilliant. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He deserves every bit of success that he gets, because he's mega, and he's so nice and so humble and just the nicest guy. And yeah, just it's really cool.
No disagreements here. Floris, take over the next one.
Yeah, I totally agree with Will. By the way, on Alex, we've had him on the podcast, and he's such an awesome, down to earth guy.
Yeah.
I have a question for you from Formula Scuderia. Is this guy asked about 40 questions, but we picked like 2 for him, so he was going a bit mad. But this was actually an interesting question. He says, I'd like to think that you've been the unluckiest F2 driver this year. He says, from the broken car component in Jeddah, in Quali, to your engine dying in Spain when you would have won the race. He wants to know, how do you deal with these setbacks?
Honestly, I don't. Racing is a sport where if you let the setbacks and disappointments control you, you would be disappointed a lot of the time, and not enjoy yourself a lot. I've been racing since I was 10, 11 years old, and I think even from karting, all these days and all these emotions, I think they just make you a better person. You learn to deal with them, and in the end, we're all trying to do well. We're all trying to win. Sometimes I'm actually more disappointed when I made a mistake or where I've cost myself points. On the way back on the plane, I would think what I could have done better. But if it's something like plain unlucky, like a part failing, which is not a mechanic's fault, or the engine stopping mid-race, these things that are completely out of our control. So I don't let those things really get to me or disturb me. Obviously, they can be career-defining moments, in the grand scheme of things. But you can't let them control you. Like I said, even with all these ups and downs this year, I'm still third in the championship. I've had a consistent season, and I think the only thing about Barcelona, it would have meant that I would have stood on the podium at every round so far, which would have been a good an achievement. But yeah, like I said, I don't dwell on these things a lot. There are a lot of races to the year, and if we look back at the times we were unlucky, you're never going to make it too far forward. You need to just look at things that you can control and try to be better the next time you can go back out.
Some mature answers on this podcast this week, weren't there, Floris? That is, both of you coming out with some brilliant points. We're going to go into the final bits because we're going to go far too long, as inevitably we would when we had about 500,000 questions to go with Will's 500,000 Twitter followers. This one's from friend of the podcast and last week's first debut appearance, Michael McClure, who wants to know for Will, you've been involved in almost every aspect of motorsport media, print magazines, commentary, social media, Drive to Survive, and even your own blog. And vlog. I remember this week with Will Buxton back in those days. What have you learned from these, and where do you think motorsport journalism is heading in the next 5 years?
Oh, great question. I think, particularly in the social media world, it's better to be right than to be first. I think the biggest thing I actually learned not from anything that I've done in the last almost 20, it was right at the start of my career when I was living in a camper van and driving from race to race. And I was living in the campsites with the fans on the race weekends and then going into work. And I would come back each night and sit around the campfire with all the fans, and they'd ask me about what was going on in the paddock. And they'd say, oh, what's this driver like? Or what's that driver like? And what really happens here? And what's this and what's that? And I realized in that year something that I hope I've carried with me through the rest of my career, which is to take the guys from the campsite, to take them in with me. So everything that I relayed back to them at the end of the day, I wanted them to feel like they were in the paddock with me. And that's what I've tried to do with everything that I've done since, which is, it's a very exclusive sport and it's very difficult to get there. It's difficult to afford race tickets, let alone to get to a point where you actually get into the paddock. And I've always seen my job is to say, come with me, come and look at this, come and look at how amazing this is, come and meet this person and see why they're brilliant, and come and see this and how fantastic this is, and to take them on that journey, to take them through the gates with me, because I appreciate every day that I'm in that paddock how lucky I am to do the job that I do. So yeah, the biggest thing that I learned, I think I learned pretty early on, which is to take someone on the journey with me and to make them feel special and for them to see the love of the sport that I saw.
May I just say it does come across, because I guess Floris should be the same as this. This is something that I feel when you say that. It's the inspiration why I'm doing what I'm doing, and Floris is doing what he's doing because of people like you who have been able to go and demonstrate what it's like in the paddock, behind the scenes stuff. So you've done it well.
Thank you. That means a lot. I really appreciate that. Thank you. What's the second part of the question? You've thrown me by being nice to me.
It doesn't happen on social media these days. The second part was, where do you think motorsport journalism is headed in the next 5 years?
Straight into the gutter.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Look, I hope it continues to open the sport up. So that's one of the great things about social media and the access that we have now, and the fact we're able to post video and interviews and everything like that, is just to keep opening it up. And what Drive to Survive has shown is that there is so much more interest beyond just what happens on track. It's about the people. It's about the personalities. It's about the human interest. We love racing drivers because they do what we wish we could do. We want to know more about these incredible gladiator heroes that race these cars and do these things that we could never do in a million years. You know, people like Jehan are my heroes because they do this thing that is insanely incredible. And what I hope, you know, the media just continues to tell their stories and show the world these brilliant athletes and who they are, why they do what they do, and why they are so phenomenally talented.
I think one thing to highlight with, it's not necessarily social media, but the way the internet's progressed as well, is that we can see, Jehan, when you do your test, which Will's kind of alluding to a little bit, we can see your reaction instantly. We can watch the videos of it instantly. And those are sort of things which I think you're saying, Will, are so good and will continue to. Like the driver cameras we get inside the helmet now in Formula One, which I presume will filter down to Formula 2, Formula 3 over the years. These sorts of things are so good. You can almost feel like a driver just without the heartbreak when your engine fails on an afternoon in Barcelona or morning in Barcelona. We're going to leave on these last couple of questions here. This one's from Greg Drow. Greg Drow? It's spelled Joe. Pronunciation, guys, is not my strongest suit. Greg at Greg YouTube something. Who are your best friends on the F2 grid?
My best friends on the F2 grid are Marcus Armstrong and Yuri Vips. Yeah, they are my two best friends.
Have you've come through like with these guys for a while as well, right? You've just been on the same paddock for donkey's years now, right?
Yeah, actually, there's a lot of guys even in F1. You know, like Joe, he's my age. Lando. It's good to see that these guys have made it to Formula One, but you can still drop them a message and they're there to answer any of your questions. I still have a lot of great guys. I've actually got along really, really well with Dennis as well this year. It's always nice to have a teammate that is kind of on the same page as you. I know he's quite a bit younger than me, but he's quite mature for his age. When we're out in Italy, we are there for prep and to try to do well. But then even the evenings, when you have someone to have a nice dinner with, chat about stuff away from racing, it's always nice. So I've got along really well with Dennis, even though we are like competitors in the Red Bull Junior team, fighting for probably a seat which may or may not open in the future. We still get along really well, and I think that's really nice to see.
Yeah, and just going back to my previous point, it's great to see the relationships as well on social media, seeing the drivers getting on with each other. It's fantastic. And this final question is from the Floop app, and it's to Will, Floris, and Jehan. Silverstone is coming up next. A real British and Indian dish is a curry, but do you know the climate impact of having a portion of butter chicken? For example, how many miles you'd have to drive to emit the same greenhouse gases? Jehan?
No.
Will?
No.
Floris? Well, that's okay, because it's very hard to find that sort of knowledge. Fortunately, the Floop app is here to help. Floop is a project that I've been working on for over a year, and it's the first app that helps anyone see how good or bad for the environment the food you eat is, and it puts it into terms that anyone can understand. One portion of butter chicken, for example, creates the same greenhouse gas as driving for 4 miles in a standard car, using air conditioning for 2.5 hours, or washing 6 loads of laundry in a washing machine. Floop is available to download on iPhone right now, and we are crowdfunding to help bring even more features, plus the all-important Android app. If any of our audience ever wanted to be like Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel, now they can be. You can invest in Floop's Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign to join the fight against climate change. There's a link on screen now if you're watching on YouTube, or you can just check the show notes below if you're listening to the podcast for you to get involved.
Does that include how much you might fart after the butter chicken?
It does create some methane, but I don't know if it's got that level of detail.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, I have to rethink, because my Silverstone special is like curry night, before the races. Kind of feel it's the only track where you really get like half decent curries at night.
Where do you go? Do you head to the Kushbu in Brackley?
No, normally I stay at Northampton, so I just get a look by my hotel, like nearest Indian restaurant, if it's like above 4 stars, we just go there. And if it's
Nice.
good, I'm kind of a person, if I find something good, I don't change. I'm happy to eat the same thing every day as long as the food is good and I'm happy. I'm not there to explore for my stomach.
That is racing driver chat 101, isn't it? If I find something I like, I don't deviate from it. I'll eat the same thing every meal, every day. There's a Karun Chandok special on the Kushbu menu in Brackley because he goes there so often. Yeah.
He was telling me about, I think it was with Perez's. Checo has a dish as well.
Yeah, Checo has a dish too. Yeah, I think so. So. Because they ran with T-Sport in Formula 3 for so long and Karun was always there. And so, yeah, they've got a whole load of dishes on the menu.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. This is why people tune in.
This is the best bit.
I'll tell you what, the best bit was Valseki's story. I've already got most ridiculous moment, which Jake's explained. Now I've got a second one. It's ridiculous. Right, that is all the time we have this week. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. If you'd like to have your question asked on a future episode, use the hashtag AskF1FS on Twitter. Drop any questions below if you're watching on YouTube, or let us know what questions you have on your mind on our Discord. Just look for the Podcast Questions channel. If you are watching on YouTube, dropping a like on the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel all really helps us. And if you're listening, leaving a review on the podcast platform you're listening on is greatly appreciated. Finally, check out f1feederseries.com for more Feeder Series insight and follow F1 Feeder Series 1, F1 FS Americas, and F1 FS Live on Twitter. You can find the links to all of that, plus the Twitter accounts for myself and everyone else on the podcast in the YouTube description or the podcast show notes. Until next time, we have been the F1 Feeder Series podcast. Goodbye.